An LSD pill just beat a leading psilocybin program, a ketamine nasal spray, and a daily antidepressant pill. All in the final big trial a drug has to pass before the FDA approves it. That part is getting covered everywhere this week. What's not covered is a number buried on page 4. That number decides whether this drug ever reaches a pharmacy.
On June 22, 2026, Definium Therapeutics, formerly MindMed, trading as DFTX, announced the headline numbers from Emerge, the big trial that decides whether the FDA can approve this drug. The drug, DT120, is a pill that dissolves on your tongue, containing 100 micrograms of lysergide, the clinical name for LSD. This isn't something you take every day. Patients got one dose in a supervised clinic, and doctors tracked their depression for 12 weeks after. The trial enrolled 149 adults with major depression, split evenly between the real drug and a placebo. In a well-run trial, nobody's supposed to know who got which. We'll come back to that. It matters more than almost anything else here. What they measured was a depression questionnaire called the MADRS. Doctors score how bad depression is, from 0, no depression, to 60, severe. They scored patients 6 weeks after the dose. Here's what they found. Patients on DT120 improved by 13.3 points on that scale. Patients on placebo improved by 5.2 points. Subtract the two, and the real drug beat placebo by 8.1 points, about as convincing a result as trials get. Roughly 1 in 4 patients on the real drug went from clinically depressed to no depression at all from a single dose. On placebo, that was about 3 in 100. That's roughly an 8 times difference. Wall Street analysts who follow drug companies for a living were floored. One at Jefferies called the results profound and said DT120 beat the scores of every currently approved depression treatment. Analysts don't use language like that casually.
So how good is 8.1 points really? For context, drugs like Zoloft and Prozac, the classic daily antidepressants, typically beat placebo by only about 2 to 3 points in their best trials. DT120 beat it by 8.1 points from a single dose. That's the story. Now let's put it next to the newer drugs already sitting in pharmacies today. Start with the closest cousin, Compass Pathways, the other big psychedelic depression program using psilocybin, the compound in magic mushrooms, under the name COMP360. Their first big trial, a single 25 milligram dose, beat placebo by 3.6 points. Their second trial, using 2 doses, beat it by 3.8 points. Both real wins, but less than half of what Definium just reported. Next, Spravato, the ketamine nasal spray already approved and prescribed today. Its FDA trials showed it beating placebo by 3.6 to 4.2 points. The trial the FDA leaned on hardest for that approval came in at 4.0. Then there's Trintellix, a daily pill that millions of people already take. Across its major trials, it beat placebo by about 2.8 to 7.1 points at the approved dose. Even its single best result sits below Definium's 8.1. Put simply, one dose of LSD beat placebo by more than a leading mushroom-based drug, a leading ketamine spray, and a daily pill people take for years. Fierce Biotech's coverage used almost the same framing, quoting Definium's own slide calling it best in class, while noting these are different trials on different patients and can't be compared head-to-head with full statistical rigor. That caveat is real. Different patients, different placebo responses, different clinics, none of this was tested side by side in the same study. But directionally, this is one of the biggest gaps over placebo published for a major depression drug in years.
If you want more of the story behind the story, subscribe. Here's another number nobody's talking about. That 8.1 point result was measured at week 6, but Definium also checked in at week 1, just 7 days after the single dose, and the drug beat placebo by 14.2 points. Read that again. The 1-week number is bigger than the headline 6-week number. That's more depression relief in a week than most drugs give in months, and it's backward from how antidepressants normally work. Pills like Trintellix build gradually over 2 to 4 weeks. This drug did the opposite. It hit hardest almost immediately, eased slightly, then held roughly steady out to 12 weeks at 7.3 points, still a real lasting improvement. The leading theory is that a single strong psychedelic experience triggers fast changes in how brain cells connect to each other, something classic daily pills, working slowly through brain chemistry, don't do. If that's right, it would explain why the effect hits so hard up front, then gently fades rather than building over weeks like a normal pill. That raises a question nobody's answered yet. Is the 12-week result a separate, lasting change in the brain, or a slow fade of that first big hit? Definium is running a 40-week follow-up study now, and it hasn't reported yet. That's the study meant to answer it.
Here's the part almost nobody covering this story is writing about. The trial won. The fight with the FDA starts now, and that's not a formality. The single biggest risk to this drug getting approved has nothing to do with how well it worked. It's called functional unblinding, the exact issue that sank a different psychedelic drug less than 2 years ago. In a well-run trial, nobody's supposed to know who got the real drug and who got placebo. Functional unblinding means everyone can tell anyway, because there's no faking the experience of a strong psychedelic. Imagine a trial for a drug that only works if you get high. Everyone knows immediately whether they got the real thing. That awareness alone can shape how someone answers a mood questionnaire weeks later. In August 2024, the FDA rejected MDMA therapy from Lykos Therapeutics for PTSD, despite 2 trials that showed it worked. The core problem? Patients could tell whether they'd gotten the drug or placebo. In Lykos's own data, more than 90% of the MDMA group correctly guessed which one they got. No placebo can mimic an LSD trip. Definium's own records show patients were monitored for hours on dosing day, averaging 5.8 hours before being cleared to leave. Good safety practice, also very hard to hide from someone in the trial. Definium hasn't yet said how many eMERGE patients correctly guessed which pill they got. Until that's public, it's the biggest question mark hanging over the trial. The second risk is repeating it. eMERGE was Definium's first big depression trial. A second one, Ascend, is already enrolling with results expected in 2027. If Ascend lands well below 8.1, the case for approval gets weaker, even if it's still positive. The third risk is how long the benefit lasts. 7.3 points at week 12 is good news, but that's a short window for a treatment pitched as a one-time alternative to a daily pill. None of this means the drug fails. It means winning the trial is the start of the story, not the end.
So here's what to actually track before any FDA filing. First, the Ascend trial's results, expected in 2027, that's the repeat test. Watch whether that gap over placebo lands anywhere close to 8.1 points. Second, watch for Definium to reveal how many eMERGE patients could actually tell which pill they got. If that number is high, expect comparisons to the MDMA rejection. Third, Definium is running 2 more big trials, this time for anxiety, plus a longer follow-up study on the original patients. Those results shape how much goodwill the whole program has heading into an actual filing with the FDA. No public date is locked beyond 2027 for Ascend. That's worth watching too. No filing date means the approval clock hasn't even started.
8.1 points beat every drug on the market. 14.2 points at week 1 should change how we think about how this drug actually works. And whether patients could tell which pill they got decides if this ever reaches a pharmacy. That's the story nobody else is telling. Subscribe for more buried science.